Every nature documentary you've ever watched about big cats ends the same way. The lion brings down the wildebeest. The narrator calls it one of nature's most powerful predators. And for the world we live in today, that's accurate. But 10,000 years ago, a lion wouldn't have been the apex. It wouldn't have been close. There was something else in that ecosystem. Something heavier, something more powerfully built, with weapons on its face that no cat alive today comes anywhere near. And the prey it was hunting wasn't wildebeest. It was woolly mammoths. The animal that sat at the top of the Ice Age food chain has been in museums for over a century. It's been in documentaries. It's been reconstructed dozens of times. And almost every version of it has gotten one crucial thing wrong. Something that changes how this animal hunted, how it lived, and why it disappeared. Those 11-inch fangs that everyone talks about? Scientists argued for decades about what they were actually for. The answer, when it finally came, was not what anyone expected. This is Smilodon, and it was not the animal you think it was. Smilodon lived from approximately 2.5 million years ago to around 10,000 years ago, spanning most of the Pleistocene epoch, what we commonly call the Ice Age. 3 species existed across that time frame. Smilodon gracilis was the smallest and earliest, roughly the size of a modern jaguar. Smilodon fatalis, the one most people picture, was larger, comparable in body size to a modern lion, but significantly heavier in build. And then there was Smilodon populator, the South American species, which is where the numbers stop being comparable to anything alive today. Smilodon populator weighed between 220 and 400 kilograms. A large male African lion reaches around 190. The largest tigers alive today push 300 kilograms under exceptional circumstances. Smilodon populator at its upper range exceeded both, and unlike tigers, it wasn't tall and lean. It was dense. Heavily muscled through the shoulders and forelimbs, with a skeletal structure built for raw power rather than speed or agility. The legs were shorter relative to body size than a modern big cat's. The build was closer to a bear than a cheetah. This was not an animal that ran prey down across open ground. Something about how it hunted was different, and for a long time, those fangs were the only explanation anyone offered. The canine teeth of Smilodon fatalis reached around 18 centimeters, just over 7 inches on the larger end. Smilodon populator's canines exceeded 28 centimeters in some specimens. That's 11 inches of tooth, serrated along the back edge, flattened side to side like a blade rather than round like a spike. For most of the 20th century, the assumption was simple. The fangs were killing weapons. The animal bit its prey, drove those teeth in, and the prey died. End of story. The problem is, the physics don't work. Those teeth, despite their length, were surprisingly fragile relative to the forces involved in actively struggling prey. Bone contact, the kind that happens when a large animal is still fighting, would have snapped them. Multiple Smilodon specimens from the Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles show broken or damaged canines, and in some cases, the animal clearly survived the break and continued living for years afterward. Which means the teeth were valuable enough to evolve to that size, but fragile enough that the animal had to be careful with them. The current evidence points toward a very specific hunting sequence. Smilodon used its enormous forelimb strength. Its arms, proportionally, were among the most powerful of any cat ever found, to wrestle prey to the ground first, immobilize it, pin it. And only then, once the animal was controlled and movement was limited, did those canines come into play, delivered with precision to the throat or the base of the skull, targeting soft tissue rather than bone. It wasn't a weapon you swung, it was a weapon you placed. And to place it that precisely on an animal as large as a young mammoth or a giant ground sloth required a level of strength and control that no living predator comes close to. The Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles have produced over 2,000 individual Smilodon specimens, more than almost any other large predator in the fossil record. And within those specimens is evidence that keeps surfacing in the research and rarely makes it into popular coverage. Healed injuries, significant ones. broken limbs that mended, damaged vertebrae that the animal survived, shoulder injuries consistent with the forces involved in wrestling large prey to the ground repeatedly over years. These are animals that took serious damage and kept living, which raises an immediate question: how? A big cat with a broken leg in a modern ecosystem dies within days. It can't hunt, it starves. But Smilodon specimens show injuries that would have required weeks or months of recovery, and the bones healed. Something was feeding these animals while they couldn't feed themselves. The most straightforward explanation is the same one that emerged from direwolf research at the same site: pack behavior, social structure, other members of the group bringing food back, or at minimum, sharing kills in a way that kept injured individuals alive long enough to recover. Smilodon, the solitary apex predator of the Ice Age, may have been neither solitary nor operating alone. The fossil record at Brea suggests something more complicated and more socially sophisticated than the lone killer most reconstructions show. For 2.5 million years, Smilodon held its position at the top of the Pleistocene food chain across North and South America. It outlasted multiple climate shifts, multiple changes in prey availability, multiple competitors. And then, approximately 10,000 years ago, it was gone. The extinction happened alongside the collapse of almost every other large mammal in the Americas: mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, American horses, camels. An entire megafauna accumulated over millions of years, disappearing within a few thousand years of each other. Two explanations have dominated the debate ever since: climate change, the Ice Age was ending, temperatures rising, habitats shifting faster than species could adapt; and human hunting pressure. The first human populations had arrived in the Americas, and they were hunting the same large prey that Smilodon depended on. The most likely answer is both, arriving simultaneously. A specialist predator built for large prey in an ecosystem where large prey was disappearing, with no capacity to shift strategy fast enough. Smilodon couldn't hunt what wasn't there, and what it needed, the mammoths, the giant ground sloths, the megafauna of the Pleistocene, was leaving faster than any predator could adapt to. What makes this harder to accept is the timeline. Smilodon survived for 2.5 million years across climate shifts that reshaped entire continents. It had outlasted everything before. The extinction that finally ended it wasn't geological, it was ecological, a collapse of the prey base that happened, in geological terms, almost overnight. What Smilodon leaves behind, beyond the fossils, is a question that paleontologists and ecologists keep returning to. The Americas after Smilodon's extinction had no equivalent apex predator for large prey. The ecological role it filled, controlling mammoth populations, regulating the movement and behavior of megafauna across entire landscapes, disappeared with it. The cascade effects of that absence shaped the ecosystems that European explorers encountered thousands of years later, and in some ways shaped the Americas still. The largest cat that ever lived didn't die because it failed. It died because the world it was built for was dismantled around it, faster than 2.5 million years of evolution could respond to. Those 11-inch fangs, precisely placed, capable of bringing down animals 4 times its weight. They were the most specialized killing tools any land predator has ever developed. And they were useless the moment there was nothing left to use them on.